Nice to see you too.
Welcome back from Colorado.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Did you went Georgia? Where'd you go?
I did not go anywhere this week.
Oh, I thought you were taking your daughter somewhere.
My wife did.
Oh,
To
okay.
Iowa.
Huh?
That's a great school.
Oh, she transferred.
No, we have two daughters. One's at Charleston.
One's at College Charleston.
Yeah, but had to come home this
Because
weekend.
of her.
Yeah, so she's home, and then the other one just is a freshman at Iowa, which I love that school.
Do you?
That's right, Iowa. It's a great school.
How is it going so far?
So far, so how are your daughters doing?
Good.
Are they at Ann Arbor?
Yeah, yeah.
They'll be rivals.
I know. But so far so good. Yeah.
I think Michigan lost their football game.
No, they won't.
No.
Oh, did they win?
Yeah, careful, yeah, then the fighting words.
This is Notre Dame.
We know what Notre Dame did.
Don't remind me.
Miserable waste.
Jim Harbaugh on line one. Jim Harbaugh on line one. Calls for you.
I actually saw.
Joe Montana might be available.
I saw her tickets. I put my ticket on the kitchen counter today, like for the Notre Dame game. It really wasn't. I have no idea what they cost. I about died when I saw it.
Really?
And I said to Tom, and they still.
He might. One time, the Rose Garden, there was one of the options that you could pay. Yeah. And is the lien, is it always the lien if it's that first one?
Oh, is that right? An error last month that
And then
we
we
didn't look
ended.
at the July ones, and now they weren't on the, okay.
Right, so I
All
think
right. I'll ask Elaine,
Yeah,
if you
just
want
a
to,
bit.
with this, okay. Thank you. Do we have any minutes to review today?
I didn't see any.
Yeah. Maybe they hold them for the second meeting?
Yeah, they're
Last
3%.
two options. That might be.
That's right.
And because last
Okay,
year
thank
was
you.
combined. Maybe we should.
To the September 11th, 2017 combined workshop and special meeting of your Board of Trustees. 16 years ago today, the unthinkable happened, and we suffered terrorist attacks on our own shores. So, to remember those who lost their lives and those who continue to suffer without their loved ones, please share a moment of silence with us after the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, let's stand, please, and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk Fitzgerald, may we please have the roll call?
Certainly, Madam President. Trustee Hansen.
Present.
Trustee Timick.
Here.
Trustee Allen.
Here.
Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Sifferman.
Here.
Trustee Tyrrell.
Here.
Thank you. Having read the agenda, does any trustee have any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? No. Moving on, we'll open the meeting up to our citizens. This is the portion of the meeting where residents can comment and address the board. Is there anyone in attendance today who wishes to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consideration of agenda items for our workshop portion of the combined meeting. Because we have two guests from the library with us tonight, we're moving the Finance Committee report up before the Public Works and Water Committee. Trustee Rudolph.
Thank you. Yes, tonight we do have two members here from our library. We have both Mary Greska, the president of the board, and Ted Bo Davis, the library director, and they are going to explain a little bit about the proposed referendum and what that is designed to address. So with that,
Thank you. Thank you. We're here to, our proposal for referendum is the library's response to our changing community needs in a library. Much has changed since our last significant renovations in 1996, particularly in the technology arena. Also, people's needs have changed with regard to need for collaborative workspace. And we believe that with our proposed referendum, our library can work within its current footprint, retain the charm and the quaintness of our beautiful library, and better serve the needs of our community.
What we're actually asking for is a $2 million referendum to be placed on the March ballot with a repayment of 10 years. I just wanted to add that this process began in 2015 as a result of a community survey and staff feedback. We learned at that time that our space was really not currently configured to meet the needs of the community. In 2016, we engaged product architecture and design to complete a professional space utilization study. So this plan is really the outcome of a professional study as well as community feedback from the residents of Western Springs. We haven't asked for a referendum in 25 years, and we haven't had any significant renovations since 1996. So our plan, we hope to respect the historic nature of the building, but also reconfigure our space in a more useful way. Mary and I would be happy to answer any questions. We provided the layout in the packets this evening.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did your survey include any young adults or high school age youth?
It did. In fact, that's one of the target demographics of some of these renovations. After school at the library and on the weekends, there are kids everywhere, as anyone who's ever visited the library after 3:30 knows. And those kids don't have any space. They don't have any group study space. We're basically housing them in a small corner of our adult services section because we just don't have any room. The children's department, the demographics of Western Springs continue to change. So we have about 1/3 of our population under the age of 18 right now, which means that there's no room downstairs in the children's room, and the teens don't have any dedicated space.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When will we be provided the survey and your plans, things of that nature?
So some of the plans were included in the packet that we sent over for tonight, but we'd be happy to share those survey results with you as well.
Okay, I didn't.
Well, it was for the finance committee.
Okay, all right. It's got to come out of
It will.
finance first.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
For your presentation. So have you had a chance to think about the referendum? Were there plans included in your packets at all?
No, those weren't. There was one in the finance packet.
Okay. Although the library is a separate political body, they don't have the authority to bring the referendum onto the ballot themselves, and so it has to go through us. And that's what we're looking for tonight, whether there's a consensus vote in support of the library's request for a referendum on the ballot in March.
And so we can circulate the packet to everyone following tonight, to the rest of the trustees?
Yes.
Okay.
Just wondering if anyone has any objection or
Objection to what? I mean, just for us to consider it?
well.
Basically, to continue with the process. So if we, as long as there's no major objections from the board, then they would continue through preparing it, and then we would review it, I think, in October timeframe is what we're talking about.
So why March?
The March.
That's the next
ballot.
That's the next election.
It becomes
As opposed to
it becomes a
November?
timing issue. Yeah.
As opposed to,
The general election in November?
in November, yeah.
They're requesting to go at the March date. But they could go either in March or November.
Can I just address that?
Yes, please.
This has been in the works. This has been in the works since 2015, as Ted said.
Oh, you need to switch or not?
I think I did, okay. In 2015, the process began. The plans have been done. We had a library director, as you know, after so many years retired. Ted Bo Davis was coming on board, we also had a significant changeover in our trustees, with only 2 of us remaining after the March election. So we kind of did what we could do before that, but I think we feel like we need to kind of move on it, and we have discussed the pros and cons as much as you can predict the pros and cons in current climate. We've discussed that, and we have decided to go with March.
So March tends to be a low turnout, right, relative to the
I think that's what tradition indicates. Whether that will hold this March with a gubernatorial primary, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So is there a consensus to proceed with this, the consideration of the library's request for a referendum?
I'm persuaded to support moving ahead with this based on the presentation. I believe it produced a very thoughtful direction for us to take, and I would support moving ahead with this.
Having reviewed the packet, there is some really, really helpful information in there in terms of the community demographics, in terms of the library usage. Also, so much respect in there for the character of the building and wanting to preserve that as much as possible while updating it kind of to today's standards. I personally found the report and the study to be very comprehensive and very thorough, and I think it would serve the community really well. So I myself am in favor of moving on with the referendum.
I haven't had the advantage also of being at the Finance Committee meeting and having a little more in-depth review of this, and hearing the library representatives talk about that this is a 20 to 30-year plan in terms of these updates. I'm comfortable as well that they're looking far enough ahead and that this is appropriate.
Thank you.
I also agree. Obviously, if the community has indicated a need for, updating and improving things at the library, then we, as representatives of the community, should present this referendum and let the community decide.
That's how I feel, too.
I haven't seen the packet.
Right.
I guess a little concerned about a March timeframe versus November, only because of turnout. But as Trustee Hansen said, let the voters decide, and they can, they can be presented the information and can vote however they want. So I don't object to it.
I have no objection of moving forward at this point. It's consideration.
Great, thank you. And we will get the information out to you so you can have a more in-depth look. Thank you. Anything else?
The other topic, just to bring to your attention, at the last meeting, we had briefly mentioned with the police pension board, or we may have alluded to an issue with one of our funds. And we have, since that meeting, I believe, had to liquidate one of the funds in that, the Holland Fund. It's shutting down. So we had to liquidate and to mutual funds for now while the pension board considers other vehicles. And there is a tentative meeting scheduled for November 8th to further assess that. In the meantime, again, those funds have been moved to a mutual fund. It's about $2.5 million, so about 18% of the total of the funds. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. And that concludes my report, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you.
One question on that. That was primarily based on relative performance of that fund. Is that right?
I'm going to defer to Grace on that.
Holland Capital chose to, at this point in time, cease operating. So they've notified all their clients that as of December 31st, they will no longer be functioning as a money advisor, as a investment advisor and manager. So we were basically forced to liquidate and move funds elsewhere.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on, Public Works and Water, Trustee Allen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Item A, capital project summary. In your packet are the 5 main projects we are tracking for 2017. Not really much new to report on 4 of them. Essentially, they are running on schedule and on budget, which includes the large 2017 roadway program, which is over $1 million. The Ridgewood Oaks Special Service Area, there'll be more to come on this. But basically, this is tied into the Ridgewood Oaks Basin project. The highlight here is that project is going to be delayed until 2018. Two main reasons for the delay. One is related to some concrete debris found in the spot where the retention wall is intended to go. And the second is just the time to complete all the special service area documentation with the Ridgewood Oak Homeowners Association. Just to let everyone know, the cost of that project will be borne largely by the Homeowners Association, though there will be a portion that's a public benefit that will reduce that cost somewhat. Item C, Rose and Garden water main. There was a lot of information in your packet on this one. It was a little bit hard to get through a bit for us, but we spent a lot of time on the committee. But just to give you a couple highlights on it, there's actually two projects. One is the water main, and part of it is the Flag Creek crossing. So there was a spreadsheet in there that kind of itemized the two. So of the $294,000 for the total of the two projects, split almost about 50-50 between the two things that are the water main and the Flag Creek crossing. Within the portion that's the water main project, there's actually 15 homeowners on Rose and Garden that are impacted by this, and essentially this is the water main's behind their house, and they have their line from the water main to their home runs behind their house, and in an event of emergency that would be very difficult for our maintenance crews to access. So we're being proactive in moving it, their connection to the front water main, which is along the street, and a few of the homes that are in that area have already done that over the years, either on their own volition or through a tear down process or something like that. So there's actually 15 homes that are impacted, and the cost of the portion that's related to the water main is divided up between those 15 homes. It's about $9,500 each home. Staff has done a good job communicating with the residents that are impacted and explaining this to them. I think in the packet there was also a draft letter that will go out to them as well. And it's just it's kind of part of our long-term thing that the roads and the waterway is really cost that the village bears, and that connection from the water main to your house is the responsibility of the homeowner. So this project overall is consistent sort of with that operating model that we've had. Are there any questions on that Rose and Garden? Because we did spend a fair amount of time with it.
Are they all in agreement? Do all the homeowners, are they all behind it?
Matt, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so Casey Bernanke from my office and I, we've met with almost everybody out there. I think there's maybe one or two who don't live in the house in a significant period of time. Everybody's on board with the concept of the project. We haven't gone into details yet with them about the specific prices, but we have explained kind of the responsibility of the service line is for the homeowner, and we've explained some of the options. There's three kind of payment options that are outlined in the process here. So our intent is, which Trustee Allen alluded to, is we're going to have another follow-up resident meeting probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so once we get these documents finalized and kind of walk through some of that process with the additional residents on that.
Thank you, and thank you also for the clarification on the three options to pay. One is immediate. The next two, one is over a term of 36 months, and the third one is to put it like on a mechanic lien on your house and have it paid at closing or the next time you pull a permit. The problem with, or not the problem, the feature of the other two is that it's charged 3% interest with it. Okay, the IDOT motor fuel tax salt sidewalk purchase. This is just a routine use of the motor fuel tax. There's actually a typo in the memo. It says 2015. It should be 2017. And that one, I believe Director Super needs to be on an upcoming omnibus for approval.
Yeah, it just needs to be approved by the end of this year to authorize the funds we've expended for this year.
Okay. That's a routine thing that we've been doing the last few years. Lastly, the water system update. The well number 3, well number 4 interference testing, which will be done by Baxter and Woodman, is scheduled for mid to late October. This is, as you may recall, is to test the kind of the water pressure, and if there's, what is the term, cones of depression that would impact our existing wells if we build a new well number 5. So that is scheduled in late October when the volume of the water demand is going to be a little bit lower. The second part, or another update, is on the well number 1 pretreatment. As you may recall, a consensus of the board a few weeks ago wanted to go forward with Baxter and Woodman, and I think that we're spending about $8,000 for them to give us an estimate of what the water treatment plant infrastructure costs would be needed to accommodate having the temporary skid out there to do a well number 1 pretreatment. Again, the concept for this is that it would allow an improvement of the water quality from well number 1 during an interim period if we do go forward with well number 5, because well number 5 is the longer lead time project. That should be ready. That report should be ready sometime very soon. I believe we're scheduled to talk about that on September 21st at 6 p.m. at our next Infrastructure Commission. And unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Allen. Moving on to Properties and Recreation Committee, Trustee Hansen.
Thank you, President Gallagher. The first item I have tonight is a report on the East Train platform work. This work is moving along nicely. The foundations for the planters and the stairs have been poured. And Director Supert, all of the Burlington Northern part of the work has been completed, correct?
Yes, correct. The work that they need to do, as well as the work that needed to be completed as part of the level 3 relocation of the fiber optics line.
Okay, and in your packet there is a change order will be required though by Burlington Northern, the ICC, and Metra regarding ADA access for Hillgrove Avenue and Wolf Road. The village engineer is working on the final design for this that will have to be then submitted to all those parties and IDOT. This anticipated change order is $37,211.73 for the engineering services. So that we will be voting on, approving rather, as it's presented later.
Has that been submitted, Matt?
Engineering documents have been approved by those parties.
Okay.
So now we're just going through the change orders that associated with that with the contractor.
Thank you.
Okay. And so that work, the train platform should be completed by late fall, correct? Yes. And so the next item is the Bemis Wood Bike Path. Again, the Bemis Woods Bike Path. Work is in progress on this. This again will be on the west side of Wolf Road from Ogden Avenue North to the bridge that connects then to the east side of Wolf Road. And work is moving along on that. That's really just a status update. Next item is there's an agreement in our packets about the intergovernmental agreement between the village and the Western Springs Park District concerning the construction and the maintenance of an ADA compliant ramp in Veterans Park. This is the park right near Grand Avenue Community Center. And the village will pay the cost of this, which is approximately $5,000 for the design, construction, and materials to construct this ramp, which is necessary at Veterans Park. And the third item I have is the Butterfly Garden update. Last month, Mr. Jack Hagan presented the idea to us of a butterfly garden somewhere in the village. There is a butterfly garden at Field Park School, but Mr. Hagan thought we might want to have another one. And we are discussing the possible location of Spring Rock Park for this garden. And Mr. Hagan and Director Supert and Casey have been meeting, I believe, to get this project on the ground. We have a small area of Spring Rock Park that would be allocated. There also is conversation, Director Alden talked to, sorry I'm not remembering his name, Jamie, right?
One of our architects that we work with,
okay.
Right.
Okay, so he talked to a landscape architect about having a butterfly garden on the north side of the rec center, which of course is in the northwest corner of town. And those plans are just talk right now. Nothing has been approved or really firmed up yet by the rec commission, or so that's just a possibility. It's kind of a dream too, because butterflies are not free, and that's kind of an expensive project. So. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Hagan.
Mr. Hagan?
Did you want my update?
Oh, sure.
Yes, please.
Sure.
For the board?
Sure.
I've been working on this since last.
Thank you.
Give you a little more of what's going on.
Okay.
Butterfly guy.
Welcome.
Okay, guys, how are you all?
Thank you.
I've been meeting, Trustee Allen gave me a name of Brad Wells, and he is a butterfly guy. He's the one who created the park, the elementary school park program, and he just created 50 butterflies in his backyard about a week ago. So he's an expert at butterflies. I met with him for a couple hours. We went over to the park. We found a spot that was all sunshine, and I just went to the Park District office this afternoon, walked over there with one of the officials there, and found a spot that was satisfactory to everybody. And they have a board meeting tomorrow night, and we're hoping that they'll okay the position of that area. And he is suggesting 2 plantings, one in the fall and one in the spring. Very well organized. He has a computer printout of various opportunities for various plantings and the colors and how they're organized, et cetera, et cetera. So things are pretty advanced as far as providing something. And the future, what I'm interested in is when can you folks make a decision and give an okay?
Well, if it's park land, if it's in the Spring Rock Park,
right.
I believe that would be their decision to make.
Well, if they say okay tomorrow night, then what?
Well, Director Supert, I believe, has already identified a certain amount of money that we would be able to contribute from our budget.
$1,500.
$1,500?
Yes.
And also perhaps some labor as well?
Yeah, we could provide some staff time to help do some preparation, either some sod removal or preparation of the beds.
So I believe if we're all in agreement, that's a decision that once the Park District comes on board, that's a decision that our village manager can make without us having to reconvene.
Oh, all right, then. Good.
If everyone else is in agreement that we're comfortable committing these funds to a butterfly garden.
We have a fall planting, according to Hinsdale Nursery, sometime before October 13th. So we would have ample time to do that if we can get an answer here in a week or so. One thing that concerns me, I kind of maybe foolishly made this recommendation, but there's the ongoing maintenance of this once it's established. And I think that I'm not sure who makes the recommendation to say we're in this. We have to maintain this program, maintain the growing area. So 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, if somebody comes up to the Park District and says, oh, what's this funny looking stuff over here? We don't need that. Put something else. So I would like to see some formal acknowledgement between the village and the Park District as far as once that property is assigned to this project, that it has some stature, some continuing arrangement, just not the voice okay, if that makes any sense.
Well, that may be a question for our attorney. It'd be an intergovernmental.
Yeah, let's talk with the Park District. We'll see whether we have to have an intergovernmental agreement, or maybe it's just signage. Maybe the Park District
however you do it, I'm hoping that
adopt some signage.
Something formal would be established that somebody just couldn't change it in the future at their own volition. That would be
one point on that, though, Jack. I think Director Supert and Director Alden did a really nice job of responding to this kind of proposal. But I think your point on ongoing maintenance is a good one, and I would just be a little concerned if the thought is that has to be a village or a park board ongoing responsibility, in perpetuity. Because you're right, if it's not maintained, it's not going to look nice.
Well,
and, and I think that was something that Field Park kind of realized that, you can get a lot of momentum to get it up and going. But 5 years from now, who's going to still keep weeding it to keep it look nice?
Brad has a mulch that is a high-tech mulch, and if it does what he says it's going to do, I'm not sure how much weeding will be necessary. So actually, the amount of maintenance could be rather, if anyone just wants to get out and get some exercise, we could maybe have some, but something formal. I was going to try to deal with the kids at the high school, but that's always an ongoing turnover. Every season we have to get people to commit to do something. So I'm not sure the maintenance part, I think, is a question of permanence, and how we handle that, I think, is a question. So that's all I've got.
Well, Jack, if you would be willing, perhaps you could put together a plan for both the Park District and for us, you know, not only on building it, but on maintaining it, or at least bring your concerns to the Park District, because my thought is it's park land. They would be responsible for maintaining it, but I'm sure.
No, because the Women's Flower Club has two areas there that they are their flowers, and they maintain them.
Okay.
Park District does not maintain those flower gardens.
Who does maintain, like, the parks and everything? Isn't it the Park District?
Yes.
Well, maintain a park, they cut grass.
Just cut grass, I guess, yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know what sort of landscaping contractor or what sort of coordination they do in other parts of their land. The Garden Club does maintain some garden beds within that area, but
the Women's Flower Club maintains their plots.
And they do maintain some other areas also in the village.
The garden club.
Yes, the garden club.
The garden club, they may, but I know in Spring Rock, they have two that I'm aware, and they have that big rock up front there on the corner there on the northeast corner. I think they maintain that also.
But perhaps bring your concerns up with the park board tomorrow night and see what they have to say about that, about the ongoing maintenance.
I don't think they're going to be involved in it. I've talked to them about it already.
They're just giving you the land?
I've talked to them about it already. I don't think that they're going to take that responsibility. I can ask them again, but let's find out how much we're talking about, what kind of maintenance we're talking about, how significant it's going to be.
Okay.
And find out, we might get 3 or 4 of you to give up some time and do some raking and things.
Mr. Hagan,
I have garden gloves.
Have you explored the prospect of a foundation support, or maybe there would be friends of the park that may be interested in underwriting any maintenance expenses connected with this project in their name?
No.
Or the garden club, for that matter.
No, they made, I talked to Mrs. Scanlon. I've had communications with her. And I was going to ask her to help out with the selection of species, et cetera, but now I found this gentleman who's just way up here as far as experience is concerned. And so I emailed her yesterday. They have a meeting tomorrow night. And I said, it's not necessary that you folks make a commitment yet. Well, then she emailed me back saying, what can we do? And I suggested planting and maintenance, if that's something they'd like to be involved in. So we might get a response from them as far as their contribution.
And who is that? Which group is that?
The garden club.
The garden club.
Garden club.
Okay.
Mrs. Catherine Scanlon, she lives in Burbridge.
Okay.
So.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership on this.
And I have no further report.
Thank you, Trustee Hansen. Moving on to General Government Committee, Trustee Timmons.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a handful of items this evening, a few of which we're actually going to take action on tonight. The first one we've actually talked about in a previous meeting, that's the Field Park 5K. And basically what we will take action on this evening is a vote to issue a temporary use permit to allow the 5K race to take place on September 16th at 4:30 p.m. This has been fully vetted by the village staff and law enforcement, so I don't think there's any issues unless anybody has any questions at this point.
No, I think this is the 3rd time they're doing this, so yeah, thank you.
It's always gone off without a hitch, so hope for that to continue on. Next item up then would be take motion to approve a settlement agreement between the village and 2 different sets of residents within the village. And this is actually a result of a dispute between 2 neighbors involving a fence that divided the property. It escalated into a lawsuit. It has since been settled between those parties. The village was involved because the fact that we had issued the fence permit initially. There's no financial impact to the village other than we are refunding a permit cost. But we do need to sign off on the agreements. And again, the reason we would take action on this evening is that one of the residents that was involved is looking to sell their house, and so they'd like to put this behind it and have a clear title and move forward. Does anybody have any questions on that? No?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Next one we've also touched on before, and that's the issuance of a Class J liquor license for the Fall Festival 2017, which is taking place on October 6th. This is the Western Springs Business Association sponsoring this, and it's to serve alcohol beverages during the festival. And Hillgrove Tap will be taking the lead on the liquor license because of their existing setup with having the license. And we actually have some representatives from the Business Association in case anybody has any questions about the event or what they're asking for.
No questions?
Do you have anything you'd like to?
Not to put you on the spot.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Peterson from the Business Association, a local business owner. This is my third year as a co-chair for this event. Last year, I believe, was the first time we did alcohol, Hillgrove Tap sold, along with food. And then we, of course, have, I think, does everyone have a layout of the event?
Mm-hmm.
Storytelling by the Children's Theater of Western Springs, pumpkin decorating, that's Bright Horizons runs, a pumpkin contest, decorating contest, everyone brings their own. We've changed that format last year. And then, of course, some other food available this year, BB's Donuts again, Casey's, and I believe Solstice is a late edition for food items only. The only ones doing alcohol would be Hillgrove Tap, beer. We asked them to add some wine because people asked for it last year, and then soda and water. Last year, the Business Association tried to sell water, but we'd rather have them handle that. Okay. The bank, Community Bank of Western Springs, one of our members, sponsors a carriage ride that goes essentially around the triangle. And we're adding a petting zoo this year with, small, minor, nothing dangerous, I've been told. Other than that, everything is identical. We have some porta potties, light towers, alcohol checkpoints staffed by, from what I understand, I wasn't part of Gathering in the Green this year or at it, but the same people that did it for Gathering in the Green. We'll be meeting, I think it's a week from this Friday, with the police department, fire department, public works, just to square away anything like that. Kristen from the Business Association is sending out letters to neighbors, as we've done. So, any questions?
No, we wish you good weather.
Yeah, last year was great, and it made the event. So, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we would be looking to take action on this evening as well, just because of the relatively close date of the event, so we make sure we get everything lined up for that.
Fine.
A couple more items. One we also discussed at our last meeting was the topic of the Cook County sweetened beverage tax issue and what we as a board would want to do there. Since we took a consensus vote, I believe, on that the last time, and it did pass it, we wanted to make some sort of a statement on this. President Gallagher, you sent a letter to Representative McAuliffe, who is looking at it from a state level in terms of potentially looking to try to have this tax repealed. And then there's also a draft resolution that was in the packet that we would look at. We would not take action on that this evening. This would go on the agenda for the second meeting in September, but it would be an opportunity for anybody on the board, if they have any suggested edits or concerns, to take a look at that and comment on that. Now, some of this may all go away if, in fact, I think this week, potentially the board themselves may vote to repeal the tax. So that's on, I think, their docket this week.
Correct. Well, we can hope.
We'll see where it goes. Okay. And then last item on the general government list is the resolution in support of solidarity statement, or the making of Western Springs as a welcoming village. And also there too, we do have some draft language of the resolution there. Would look to move forward with that later in September. There may be some questions or concerns about how the recent passing and the signage of the Trust Act at the state level might impact this. From what I understand in talking with our village attorney, it does not. Right. So we can still move forward with our welcoming resolution and be in good standing there. So.
I just had a question, and you may have addressed this last time, but was there ever any consideration given to language or anything regarding how we would respond to any federal ICE actions? Anything about that?
So, Chief Buds, would you maybe comment? Because we did cover that to a certain extent already.
In the rare event that we do get a request from ICE through our NCIC system or LEAD system, we will do our best to cooperate and accommodate those requests. But what I like about this resolution is it complements what we already do as a best practice department, and we are in full compliance with the Trust Act. Our goal as officers is not to check for undocumented immigrants or anything like that. We want to give everybody fair access to law enforcement services, and that could be victims or witnesses. Again, our goal is not to check for immigration status, but let people, be welcoming so they can come to the police department for any service they may need without the fear of any kind of, retribution or that we're going to turn anybody over to ICE. But we look at it as ICE as a federal partner, and there are some legalities that we have spoken to with Attorney Jerusik about how this works with the Trust Act and how this works with federal mandates as far as grants. And I'm confident in saying as your chief that we are going to comply with federal law and with the Trust Act. And also, again, we're going to couple that with this resolution because we, as a CALEA accredited department, we have been doing best practices, and this is certainly no exception to that. So I'm confident that my officers are going to comply with the law and give everybody fair treatment without necessarily targeting them, checking for immigration status.
Have we ever received any sort of federal request to help them enforce one of their actions?
I can't recall offhand. It's very rare. If we get an administrative or judicial warrant for an arrest, certainly we have to comply with that.
Yes.
If we find out that there is a detainer request during, when we're processing somebody for one of our own charges, we certainly will reach out to our federal partners, but we're going to be reasonable as far as how long we would hold somebody to have them come in and question that to verify if they're documented or not. It hasn't happened in recent memory, and it's fortunately a very rare occurrence.
Okay, yeah. No, I'm thinking specifically of an immigration enforcement action. So it would sound like that would be extremely rare.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess maybe to that point, this proposed resolution doesn't say anything about ICE. And I was wondering why that's not in here.
So we were trying to walk the line between making sure people understood what the village was about and what Chief Buds had articulated, but we also were not interested in directly opposing and going for like a sanctuary city sort of status where we would then be in direct conflict with the federal law, and then that would put us potentially at risk for grants and things like that.
Well, I know, but why don't we say that we support we respect our partnership with the immigration.
Oh, you mean to the positive?
Because it feels like that's sort of being intentionally not addressed here.
Agreed, which is partly my question.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection.
Siri couldn't even answer that.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the problem is local governments are caught now between federal mandates and state, right?
Yes.
And I'm not sure that it behooves us to really identify. What this does is it identifies us as a welcoming community that will be non-discriminatory without thumbing our noses at either the feds or the state officials.
We did a lot of research on this, so we just didn't make this language up. There was a number of other, am I right?
There's welcoming city definitions and
the language that we took was modeled after a number of other nationwide municipalities as a way to kind of strike the balance, is my understanding.
Well, I don't mind the welcoming. I think that's great, and I'm glad we're doing that. It seems like it's missing the other half of the equation, and it just seems odd that we're going on one side and not the other, because I think what we're trying to say is we're supportive of both.
I'm very pleased with the language that I see in the draft, particularly with the emphasis on respecting and adhering to the values of the community and avoiding what I think is a lightning rod, and that is the term sanctuary city. This focuses on the positive response and our outreach to all residents and visitors in our community. I do believe, though, that Trustee Allen's point about perhaps language that would include our preservation of public safety and the interest of public safety might be added to that. But I am very pleased with what I see in this draft thus far, focusing on those values that we subscribe to.
Trustee Allen, do you have maybe some draft language you would propose, and then we could consider that? I mean, because we aren't going to take action on this evening, and it would be good maybe for Village Attorney Jurzik to take a look at that, because I guess my concern would be is if we went to the point of mentioning and supporting the federal activity and ICE, does that then put us potentially in violation of the trust?
That's my
law?
concern.
Yeah, so does...
The trust of...
This is the state, Governor Rauner came out with the Trust Act, I think. If you
Yeah.
Mike, you can speak to it.
I mean, what we have here is you have a federal administrative rule that has been added to federal grants that requires really two things. There's three conditions for federal grants. For instance, our burn grant. One is to comply with federal law and say that we're going to cooperate with other law enforcement agencies. And that's right out of a federal statute. So, I mean, that's a no issue requirement. The next two requirements that are now required out of federal grants are these administrative rules. One is you have to provide access to, essentially unfettered access to your lockups to federal agents in these immigration matters if you want to stay eligible for your federal grants. And then you have to detain folks for up to 48 hours to allow the federal officers to interrogate these, these detainees. So 3 conditions. One's based on federal law. 2 are administrative add-ons. That is where the federal government came down after the litigation out west that challenged the executive order that was issued by the president. Our governor recently signed this Illinois legislation called the Trust Act, and it basically says that our local law enforcement, officials and agents are going to not detain people. They're not going to process and allow unfettered access without warrants. It really puts local municipalities between 2 conflicting statutes: a state law and then a federal law. 2 federal, to me, administrative regulations. And then just today in federal court, there was argument before one of our federal justices downtown, and no decision has been made. The judge took the matter under advisement. But what was interesting, a summation of where the arguments went today, was there was an acknowledgement from the federal government that, the federal law that requires the cooperation component, the 1773, law, federal government understands, and the judge understood, in the city of Chicago opposing, the federal government on this issue, understood the requirements that federal law required for a cooperation among state, federal, and county law enforcement. But in regard to the 2 administrative rules, the access to lockups and the 48-hour detention rule, there was an acknowledgement from the attorneys representing the federal government that those aren't based on a federal statute like criteria number 1, that those were administrative in nature. And the takeaway from the folks that that were in the courtroom were that clearly the judge understands those issues, clearly understands that those aren't based or grounded on a federal statute. And those are clearly the 2 rules that the Trust Act counters in a state mandate. This resolution doesn't draw us into that dialogue. This resolution, it does talk about inclusiveness. It does talk about, respect and, community values. But, the Trust Act, counters in a state mandate. This resolution doesn't draw us into that dialogue. This resolution, it does talk about inclusiveness. It does talk about, respect and, community values. But, the Trust Act, counters in a state mandate. This resolution doesn't draw us into that dialogue. This resolution, it does talk about inclusiveness. It does talk about, community values. we can certainly add language to the resolution about, cooperation with, law enforcement agencies, but I don't know that that is typically the thrust of what this resolution is intended to do, and what the other communities that adopted similar resolutions, that's not I believe, kind of the policy that went into drafting it.
But these have all come about, these resolutions, by various municipalities and cities across the country. They have come about in response to these administrative actions, correct? Because
Either
of the
these or
threat of
some,
withholding
yeah.
funds for
Either
public
these
safety.
administrative actions or some predecessor action, like the executive order, that was, attempting to enhance law enforcement's role in taking immigration enforcement from a federal level and trying to push that down to the local level. So, I mean, that's where a lot of these welcoming ordinances have come from, no doubt.
Right, and personally, I object to the federal government, to borrow a phrase, trying to weaponize federal funding for things such as our public safety, and it concerns me in terms of the long term and what kind of message that sends to our community and anyone else who is looking to our community. So that's the issue that I have with this.
Yeah, and I guess the stage is set. You do have you have federal administrative regulations now that are out there. You have an Illinois statute that, to me, is directly counterpoint, that puts, it's going to make our chief, other law enforcement departments, walk a fine line in terms of how do they handle not the easy things when a criminal warrant is issued. How do they handle administrative requests? How do they handle the informal requests, and do it in a way that is consistent with the certification that you have to make if you want to keep your grants in place. And there is no good answer, because now we have, I think, essentially two conflicting regulations coming from different jurisdictions. But I'm very confident that the litigation that's pending downtown will, the decision will not be dragged out. I get the sense, based on today's arguments and the reports I got from on it, that a prompt decision is going to happen, because I think now that the Trust Act is in place, even though our federal courts, that was the other issue. Chicago's fighting this fight. There's other communities in Illinois that filed amicus briefs in support of Chicago's position. One of the points that was made today in court, and was made by the city of Chicago, is they're advocating not just for the city of Chicago and there are 6 or 8 communities signed an amicus brief. I was one of them that signed on behalf of communities, and Chicago's attorneys made the point that this argument is not just for the city of Chicago and the Illinois municipalities that are joined in the amicus brief, that this is a national issue, and that they were advocating for the judge to look at it through that lens, that this should not be a parochial issue that's just impacting us locally, that it has the same effect whether you're in Indiana, New York, as it does in Chicago for local law enforcement. So
I appreciate that very, very recent update. I hadn't seen what had happened today. So.
And it actually just came down later this afternoon. I got an email, when I was out of the office, but I can share it with everybody. It was not a confidential, email. It was a summary.
Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, so because we have these two conflicting larger government entities, and because what Chief Budd says, it's such a rare occasion, he can't even remember when it came up the last time. To me, it makes sense to remain silent on this, on that specific point, but to go ahead with the welcoming and the part of the ordinance that reflects our community values.
I would support that as well.
What is the objective? Just it seems to me the language is what I expect our community already. It's just to put that in writing and to not be a sanctuary city.
I think it's to partially address some of the residents who have come forward asking us to consider becoming a sanctuary city, which we, at this point, coming out of general government, we're not comfortable with, but we didn't want to remain silent on the issue.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding as well.
Especially in light of what happened recently in South Carolina, I think it's kind of important to put that out there. That these are the values of our town.
If in the meantime, with this most recent court action, something changes, though, will that then further impact the resolution that we would vote on at our next meeting?
No. Okay. No. What you're doing has you know, we are not near the sanctuary city line. This is, you know, this is that, you know, what's happening in the pending litigation in federal district court downtown will not impact this resolution, and it really won't impact the way our police department operates.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions, then that concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you, Trustee Timmick. Moving on to Public Health and Safety, Trustee Sifferman.
Madam President, colleagues, during the course of our September 5th Public Health and Safety Committee meeting, Director of Law Enforcement Services, Brian Buds, announced the Police Department's participation in the upcoming Illinois Rail Safety Week activities during the week of September 25th through September 30th. By conducting various law enforcement and public safety awareness activities at grade crossings and railroad rights-of-way during that week. When considering the fact that Illinois ranked second in the nation in grade crossing fatalities and 7th in trespass fatalities in 2016, as well as considering the volume of daily rail traffic and commuter usage through our village, I believe it's incumbent upon all of us to increase our awareness of the safety precautions we must practice and enforce in and around railroad rights-of-way. The Western Springs police officers will be conducting enforcement and public education exercises at all railroad crossings during Rail Safety Week to enhance the safety of our residents and our visitors. That's the note I wanted to pass on. There's one other item, and that is the Western Springs Fire and Rescue Services Association held another successful pancake breakfast yesterday. Hundreds of residents and visitors were again treated to firefighter hospitality and enjoyed the opportunity to board fire and rescue vehicles and examine various pieces of safety equipment purchased with funds donated to the association. I had too many pancakes that day myself. That completes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Sifferman. Moving on to Planning and Zoning Committee, Trustee Terrell.
Thank you, Madam President. All I have is a brief update on Foxford Station. Although it may not appear as such, the work is progressing. They're doing the below-ground. Concrete is being poured for the underground stormwater storage system. Once this system is complete, the focus then will shift to normal foundation work for the entire site. The developer is hopeful that this work can begin in early October. Residents and business owners can check westernsprings.com or the Village Facebook for frequent updates. That's all I'd have, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Terrell. Yeah, I saw the pictures, Marty, of the, so that it'll store water, these foundation walls, and then let the water sift out so that it won't overwhelm our system? Is that the?
Correct. That's a good layman's description of it.
Yeah,
when it comes to engineering, I know enough to be dangerous, and it travels from one chamber, as they call them, to the next, so that it's let out at a slower pace and then into the public system. And so it's designed, that's entirely enclosed. I mean, there's maintenance access areas that are pretty limited in there, but everything else is built on top of that, and then the foundation, the base of the building, if you will, is mostly at grade what you see now and what was there before. So there's no basement except for these chambers, which is safe and away from the public.
How much water will it hold, and do you know?
That's a good question. I knew that answer a few months ago. I don't know. I can find out though. Yeah, it's quite a bit. It's really essentially the old basement or old, well, I guess I'd say 2/3 of the footprint of what Tischler's was, if that helps any. And then imagine a basement depth of, at least 16 feet.
Oh.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Terrell. Okay, moving on. Is there any other business? Then we'll move on to consideration of an action on agenda items during the special meeting portion of our combined meeting. The Illinois state statutes allow a municipality to collectively vote on a group of ordinances, resolutions, and other motions, such as awards of contract, appointments, etc. This is known as an omnibus vote. All the items contained on the omnibus vote list have been previously discussed by the President and Board of Trustees on at least one occasion, and often on several occasions. By placing them on the omnibus vote list, a single vote may be taken to approve them. A trustee may remove any item from the list and have it discussed and voted on separately prior to the omnibus vote. Is there any such request? Hearing none, Trustee Timick?
President Gallagher, I move that the following ordinances as contained on the meeting agenda for September 11th, 2017 be adopted and/or approved under an omnibus vote. Agenda item number 7, ordinance 17-2900, amending Title IV Liquor Control, Chapter 1 Alcoholic Liquor, Section 4-1-10A, 10 of the Western Springs Village Code of 1997 as amended, relative to the number of Class J special events only on village-owned property, beer and wine only, liquor licenses which can be issued in the village of Western Springs, Cook County, Illinois, for the Hillgrove Tap, LLC, for the Fall Festival 2017 event to be located on the Water Tower Green area and portions of the adjacent rights-of-way of Hillgrove Avenue, Grand Avenue, and Walnut Street. Special event date Friday, October 6, 2017. Agenda item number 8, motion to approve a license and indemnification agreement for temporary use of a public right-of-way to operate a beer and wine retail sales tent and alcoholic beverage sales consumption area at a special event, Hillgrove Tap LLC and the Western Springs Business Association for the Fall Festival 2017 event. Agenda item number 9, motion to approve a license and release, hold harmless, and indemnification agreement for the temporary use permit for the Field Park Fit Family 5K Run, Walk, and Kids Dashes 2017 event. Agenda item number 10, motion to approve a settlement agreement between Adam and Lisa Cody and the Village 2015 CH 7160. Agenda item number 11, motion to approve a settlement agreement between Paul and Christine Koltgen and the Village 2015 CH 7160.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'd second it.
Any discussion? Clerk Fitzgerald, may we have a roll call vote?
Yes, Madam President. Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Timick?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph?
Aye.
Trustee Sifferman?
Aye.
Trustee Terrell?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. Moving on to reports. I have just a few things to report on tonight. First of all, I'd like to welcome our village manager, Ingrid Veltney, to the dais.
Thank you. I think I've survived.
It's nice to see you here, and I hope to see you in time, all in the future time.
Thank you.
Also, the Western Springs Fire Department has coordinated a community effort to collect needed items for Houston. Even though Irma has captured our attention lately, Houston is still suffering quite a bit, and they have lost, their fire departments have lost much, as well as the members of the fire department are often impacted by the results of that hurricane. So our fire department is collecting supplies. There's a list online. They're pretty much supplies you would find in your house, toiletries, disposable supplies, any other miscellaneous supplies. Chief Mayor, did you have anything more to add to this?
No, I would just say I think it's a pretty comprehensive list.
Captain Heinzelman has been in direct contact with the chief in Irving, Texas, who's in contact with the chief in Katy, Texas, to get these supplies down to them. 80% of those members lost their homes to the flooding, and they're still doing their work. I would just stress, though, that people know that when they look at this list, they're not looking for clothing and water and things like that to bring. But if you look at the list and go according to the list, you know, it would be very nice. And we do intend to have a semi then that's been donated to load at the end of this and ship it all down to them. And it'll be distributed to the first responders.
And so residents can drop off items at both firehouses?
At Station 2, at 5501 Grand is where we're looking to collect it.
Okay.
How are the residents going to know of this?
Well,
just on the website, or is there flyers, or?
It is on the website, it's on the village website with the list of what, the list is there, what we're looking for supplies.
Have we sent out an email blast?
I think it did go out on the notification to the residents, yes.
I believe it's also been posted in the businesses in the area. We had it out at the pancake breakfast also. I know the Fire and Rescue Association was also collecting donations for the fuel because it costs over $800 for the fuel just to get the semi down there. And the semi is going to be driven by Captain Heinzelman, so it's volunteering his time too.
And I wanted to mention that donations will be accepted starting September 18th, correct, Chief?
Correct.
And then ending October 3rd.
Correct.
So.
Because we got a window there, then when we are ended, that we got to get the semi loaded and out of here, that it's available, that's been donated, so we can get down there and they can get it back to use that for their business. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, I'd like to bring up the Flag Creek Greenway. As you remember, that was a contentious issue this past spring. The funding authority for that, the matching grant authority, is the federal government. That money is distributed through the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. CMAP is reorganizing the way that they disperse federal grant dollars, and they have closed down the projects to accept grant dollars for 3, 4, or even 5 years. They may not open it up again until 2022, I believe. Because of that, I asked staff to resubmit our project for the Flag Creek Greenway. Not that we are revitalizing it at the local level, we're not. We won't do that unless there is community support behind it. But if there does come a time where we have community support behind it, I don't want us then to be stymied by the fact that we don't have the grant project in the works. Any questions on that? Okay. And then finally, we have a ping pong tournament coming up. Tracy, September 24th, were you involved in that? Or?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be on the Village Green, part of the French Market. It's going to be Sunday. That's a Sunday morning from 11 to 12. It's free, and then there's a tournament scheduled from 12 to 2, there are flyers we send out. It's in the fall brochure, and it's gone out to various communities nearby as well. So we have people who are already registering. We have like a half a dozen already signed up. So
oh, wonderful.
We'll be here soon enough.
Yes,
so
in a couple of weeks.
Ping pong player, we'll be outdoors and we're ready to go.
Yeah. And you don't have to be a professional. If you just want to come hit it around, that's fine. Did we send out an email blast on that as well, I wonder?
It went through the Recreation Department's Facebook, and it was out on, as well as something else.
Tower Topics.
Yes, Tower Topics, thank you as well.
So maybe when it gets closer, we can just also send out an email. Thank you. And that concludes my report. Village Manager Velkme?
No report tonight.
Thank you. Village Attorney Jerusik?
No further report tonight.
Thank you. Then may I have a motion to recess to closed session?
I'll move that we recess closed session.
For the purpose of discussing pending litigation only?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
I don't have anything for executive session tonight because those 2 settlement agreements were approved without discussion. Is there anything else to discuss? Then I think we could just withdraw that motion, just do a motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay, fine.
I'll withdraw that motion and turn it into a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.